My past project was painted on this jacquard silk, and I thought it would be great to adopt the painting pattern to this jacquard pattern. Dots or little spots would be just perfect. I have two videos on my channel, very impressionistic, where images were painted with short strokes and with dots. But this time I decided to paint silk a little differently. And let's see what happens. You probably haven't seen my last video, so just in case. A jacquard is a fabric that has a design or motif woven into the construction of the weave. I have my jacquard silk stretched over the frame. As usual, I will need my palette plate, a paper towel to dry my brush, and a resilient synthetic brush with a fine tip. My choice of dye colors is pretty random, but first I want to wet one half of the silk with water and leave the other half as it is. And I really like the texture of this silk when the pattern is unobtrusive and all over revealed. Here are the colors of my dyes: orange, ultramarine, red and emerald green. And I've got two complementary pairs. And I like working with complementary colors. They give an active and dynamic range. Initially, my idea was to create dots in size with dots on silk. And then I decided to expand my field of activity and vary the size of dots. And plus some of them, dots, will be on dry silk and some on wet silk. So the ones on wet silk will spread out on their own. As long as there's a lot of paint on the brush, the dots will gradually blur. And of course, especially on wet silk. But as the paint is used up and the brush dries, the dots become paler and remain more compact. And now you can see how gradually the individual dots start to merge. Anyway, it wasn't my idea, to make these dots merge, but I like it so far. If you use a dryer brush, if you dry it on a paper towel after rinsing, the dots will spread less. And here again there are options to put the dots closer to each other or far away, to make them drier or wetter, larger or smaller, to fill the gaps between the dots at once or to wait until the first ones dry and then put other dots between the dry ones. And this process is very pleasant, to watch how the dots spread, how the wet dots merge and their colors blend. But not only that, in fact, it's also a very good practice for controlling the wetness of the brush, or in other words, water control. At this point, the dyes practically float together, forming a big blur. And this one was too active. I should have dried the brush. It's better now, though paler. Oh, again. But you can see for yourself that it takes a little practice to achieve a more predictable result. And here I put brighter dots to add dynamism. And I gradually fill in the gaps between the dots, and the jacquard pattern echoes the drawn dots, and it already turns out quite a nice interplay. And let the dots closer to the edges be more bold and large. As you know, I always stand for variety, and this time I would like to combine large with small, dry with wet, bright with pale, separate with merged. You see, I go from wet to dry silk, and the size and spreadability or fluidity of the dots change. And if I wet the brush a little, I can make the dots more fluid. And as always, likes, comments, subscriptions are warmly welcomed. Thanks to everyone who leaves their reactions. It's really great. I appreciate it very much. And I love that something as simple as dotting silk can be so interesting and engaging. And as usually, I switch between colors and shades, but trying to stay in a cohesive organic range. So that this dot doesn't look like a blot, I add a dot of the same color next to it, and now it doesn't look so outstanding. I think that idea of adjusting the painting pattern to the jacquard pattern is interesting and deserves some attention. And within this theme, there is a huge field of different possibilities. And this was the first advantage of this video. The second is that this silk painting pattern without resist, without gutta, allows you to master water control skills and thus to improve your silk painting. And the third advantage is that you can make inserts or patches with these dot patterns in your larger projects, in paintings or in big scarves. We could discuss the impressionistic nature of this type of silk painting here, but let's save that for another time. And I'm gonna show you the palette closer and how the dye gradually absorbs into the silk and spreads out. Because the dots are grouped by size and at the same time have different colors, the image doesn't look boring, and the play of color creates such a fluttery, airy impression. And here where the brush hits an undried dot, it spreads. So many nuances here. And now I'm going to show you a trick. Let's say I would like the dots to merge in some place, and I can swipe a white brush with water in that place and wait what happens. You see, even though the dots will merge a little bit, there can be this contour line on the edge. In my case, it's not very pronounced, but usually such contours remain more obvious, which can be an additional effect. And so here we have small dots on dry silk with large gaps. Here we've got a lot of dots merged. Here we have dots on dry silk, but large and with small gaps. And here we did a wet brush stroke after we drew the dots. And one more interesting point or tip. If we put the frame vertically while the silk is still wet, we can set the direction of our drips, and they can turn out oblong in this direction. As always, I try to show you different ways and approaches to silk painting. In the meantime, enjoy the final result, and I'll see you.